Regarding the ongoing situation in Iran, I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
And then if the U.S. were to take some type of military action, would the president go to Congress to seek war authority?
I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals. I gave you the statement from the president. He'll make a decision within 2 weeks.
What's your message to everyday Trump supporters? Not the Tucker Carlsons or other big names, but everyday Trump supporters, grassroots who voted for President Trump to stop the wars, rejected this in the primary, going into another war with voting against Nikki Haley, and they want to see non-U.S. involvement in this war. What's your message?
Trust in President Trump. President Trump has incredible instincts.
That was the White House press secretary assuring us that our dementia-riddled dipshit president has the best instincts, because of course he does, even though he's reportedly not taking tactical nukes off the table if and when he chooses to go to war with Iran. He has the best instincts, but more on that story later. But right now, presumably, he needs to mull over whether or not he should go to war with them at all for a little bit longer, at least until he can hear from every Fox News host. Although, he already is kind of already at war with them since he's assisting Israel with their war. So it's a bad situation. But what makes it arguably worse in so many ways than the lead up to the Iraq war is the fact that we're living in a post-truth society now where misinformation travels faster than ever before. On top of that, we're now stuck with a president who's even more power hungry than George W. Bush was. As Mehdi Hassan put it, even George W. Bush and Dick Cheney got congressional approval for Iraq. And to his point, it's not like it'd be hard for him to get congressional approval since only a small fraction of members of Congress oppose war with Iran. And that's embarrassing because it means that the majority of the so-called opposition party is totally fine with a fascist madman leading us into another forever war in the Middle East. But I get the sense that Trump has been convinced to actually go to war with Iran because it'd make him more popular, which may be why he doesn't want Congress getting any credit if he does take this path. And of course, this is all conjecture on my part, but he accused Obama in the past of wanting to start a war with Iran to improve his poll numbers. So if he thinks that there'd be a similar rally around the flag effect for him, then he might just do it. There's a reason why neocon warmongers are currently love bombing him, because they know that flattery works with this guy because he is a massive fucking narcissist. And unfortunately, because of all of this, it does seem like Trump is, at the moment, leaning towards a full-scale war with Iran. On Wednesday, the Wall Street Journal reported that he already actually approved an attack on Iran, but he hadn't yet given the final go-ahead. But as The Hill reports, Trump has since denied that report. But seeing as how he's a compulsive liar, and sources tell independent journalists like Ken Klippenstein that he's serious about war with Iran, I'm inclined to believe the Wall Street Journal's report here. And aside from pressure from the neocon establishment, there's one other factor that helped lead us to this potential war with Iran, and that factor obviously is Israel. The New York Times explains in painstaking detail how Netanyahu goaded Trump into joining his war with Iran. They write, "The American intelligence assessment was that Mr. Netanyahu was preparing not just a limited strike on the nuclear facilities, but a far more expansive attack that could imperil the Iranian regime itself, and that he was prepared to go it alone. The intelligence left President Trump facing difficult choices. He had become invested in a diplomatic push to persuade Iran to give up its nuclear ambitions and had already swatted down one attempt by Mr. Netanyahu in April to convince him that the time was right for a military assault on Iran. During a strained phone call in late May, Mr. Trump again warned the Israeli leader against the unilateral attack that would short-circuit the diplomacy. But over the last several weeks, it became increasingly apparent to Trump administration officials that they might not be able to stop Mr. Netanyahu this time, according to interviews with key players in the administration's deliberations over how to respond and other familiar with their thinking. In other words, he's too weak to control the leader of a client state. What a beta male. Now, the authors explain that this isn't the first time Netanyahu has done this. He's been huffing and puffing about going to war with Iran for a very long time, but you see he's always backed down because when it was clear to him that the other American presidents he was also trying to go into war would not be there to support him, then he couldn't do what he wanted to do because he can't do this alone, despite him saying he can. And he's been lying about Iran being weeks away from having a nuclear weapon literally for decades now.
The deadline for attaining this goal is getting extremely close. And Iran, by the way, is also outpacing Iraq in the development of ballistic missile systems that they hope will reach the eastern seaboard of the United States within 15 years. By next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks, before they get enough enriched uranium for the first bomb. The foremost sponsor of global terrorism could be weeks away from having enough enriched uranium for an entire arsenal of nuclear weapons. That would place a militant Islamic terror regime weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year.
And no other president up until this point took the bait. They've been close to taking the bait. They might have wanted to, but they didn't give in to Netanyahu's pressure. But Trump, however, is different. He's more of a cuck. And Netanyahu wasn't just convinced that Trump would follow him into a war, but we now know that Trump gave him the blessing and subsequent assistance for the war that he's starting with Iran. And now that he is this close, the neocons have come out in unison to nudge him over the edge in the direction of going to war with Israel against Iran. You have Senate Republicans posting about how popular war with Iran would be with the Republican Party base. They've also deployed their minions to Fox News to emphasize why war with Iran would make us safer, and more importantly, it'd make Donald Trump look like a hero.
We do know that Iran poses a threat not only to Israel, but also to the United States of America. We see where they use proxy terrorist organizations all around the globe to target American citizens.
You need an ICBM to get to America. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, I think the odds are unacceptably high that we would find out with a mushroom cloud over New York City or Los Angeles or Tel Aviv in Israel.
President Trump is a historical figure already. He's about to go to another level of history making. 4 presidents have promised to make sure Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. It will be Donald J. Trump who delivers on that promise very soon. Well done, Mr. President.
So we're seeing unprecedented levels of ass-kissing because Trump is a narcissist whose only consideration is what would benefit him. He's not thinking about American troops or the Iranian people or the ramifications of another forever war in the Middle East. He's just thinking, how will this make me look? See, the neocons know this, and it's why they're winning right now. It's why they were able to dictate his foreign policy in his first term, because he's very easy to manipulate, because he's not a very bright guy, and he's also a narcissist who succumbs to flattery. But the brown nosers aren't just complimenting him and telling him that he'd go down as some kind of a hero if he does a war with Iran. Some are literally claiming that Trump was chosen by God to do this. For example, Trump shared this creepy text with his ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who told Trump that God spared him in Butler, Pennsylvania, to be the most consequential president in a century, maybe ever. And he later adds, "You have many voices speaking to you, sir, but there is only one voice that matters. His voice," referring, of course, to, I guess, Jesus. And I feel like this is so insulting to Christians because Mike Huckabee is basically saying God chose this rapist war criminal who's a compulsive liar, who cheated on his wife, who has been accused of sexual harassment by dozens of women, to be like his proxy on earth, as if he's the fucking Pope. It's so bizarre. But, aside from this being utterly demented, it apparently resonated with Trump, because he decided to share it on social media. And he didn't say, yeah, I'm sharing this because it's fucking deranged. He shared it because he loves the flattery. And since Trump seems increasingly convinced that he does indeed have a divine mandate to do this, well, it's led to the justification of potential horrors that could only be described as biblical, no pun intended. And what I mean is, we're beyond the prospect of mere strikes on Iran or potential regime change. Trump is now reportedly not taking nukes off the table.
There have been a lot of headlines this afternoon, including one from The Guardian that claimed that the U.S. military has doubts about whether the bunker buster bombs could get the job done, and further claiming that only a tactical nuke maybe could finish it. And it further stated that the president is not considering a tactical nuke, that it was not one of the options that was presented to him. I was just told by a top official here that none of that report is true, that none of the options are off the table, and the U.S. military is very confident that bunker busters could get the job done at Fordo.
Holy shit. I don't even know what to say. This is an absolute madman, and the fact that this is being floated right now is genuinely just so terrifying that I don't have the words to articulate how terrifying it is. But I mean, if bunker buster bombs could do the job, then why would you not take all other options off the table? Why are nukes a possibility if you don't think you're going to need to use them? Because you want to. Because you want to press that big red button. Right? I mean, before Trump was elected the first time, he talked about how it was weird that we can't use nukes. Remember there was that report, I think it was from Mika and Joe from MSNBC, where they were talking to Donald Trump, or there was, I don't remember the specifics, but like Trump was saying, why can't we use nukes? Why can't we use nukes? He wants to press the button. He's talked about nuking hurricanes, maybe because he just wants to see the explosion. I don't know. We can only speculate, but needless to say, this is a very, very dangerous fucking moment. And I don't think that it's something that Iran or the United States could recover from. So, you know, when you combine fanaticism, no care for self-preservation, and radical religious beliefs with nuclear weapons, that is a danger. And ironically, that's exactly what former White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany is saying about Iran.
You combine fanaticism, no care for self-preservation, and radical religious belief with nuclear weapons, that is a danger.
The lack of self-awareness here is truly astounding. And I hate to break it to these people, but regardless if Iran wants a nuke or not, it's obviously going to be something that they get for deterrence and not to use as a preemptive strike, because countries with nuclear bombs are more protected from the threat of Western imperialism. That's just objectively and empirically true, which was brilliantly explained by Mehdi Hassan on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Ukraine gave up nukes, got invaded. Saddam Hussein gave up nukes, got invaded and executed. Gaddafi gave up chemical weapons, got invaded, raped and killed. Again, if you're the Iranians, are you not looking at this thinking, this means we need nukes? I would rather not give them an incentive to go get nuclear weapons. I'm anti-nuclear weapons for anyone. So I don't want Iran to have nukes. But the best way for Iran not to have nukes is not to attack them. That makes countries want to have nukes more. It's just rational to go, oh, the countries who have nukes like North Korea, they don't get invaded. So why give them an incentive to get more nukes? Why not actually have a weapons of mass destruction-free region? You know which country does have nukes in the Middle East? Israel, in violation of UN Security Council resolutions. You know which country doesn't allow IAEA inspectors into the country? Israel. You know which country hasn't signed the NPT, unlike Iran? Israel. We should talk about Israel's nuclear weapons, which actually incentivize others in the regions, not just Israel, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, to think about nuclear weapons of their own.
Exactly. And the Americans who typically gobble up imperialist propaganda never ask themselves, why is it okay for us to have nuclear weapons, but not other countries? What makes us better than them? Why is it bad for them to have it, but not for us to have it? It's not like we're going to drop it on other countries just flippantly, right? Well, I mean, maybe Trump kind of wants to do that, but like, why are we different? Why are we better and superior to these other countries? Now, just to be clear, I don't think any country should have a nuclear weapon. Not Iran, not the United States, not Israel. But they've been demonstrably effective at stopping imperial powers from fucking with them. But it has to be because, you know, we're living in this cartoon reality where we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. And if the bad guys get a bomb, then the good guys get bombed. I mean, it's cartoonishly idiotic, But it's the exact line of propaganda that is being pushed by networks like Fox News, who are hornier than ever for war, and they push this shit because it works, unfortunately. Now, here's just a small compilation of the drivel that they're feeding to viewers, and Donald Trump specifically, in order to manufacture consent for another disastrous war.
Satellite images revealing the location of a previously unknown Iranian nuclear site. Now, the facility spans nearly 2,500 acres. And this is a big discovery. Jillian Turner has more from the State Department. Good morning, Jillian.
Pretty explosive, Dana. These satellite images that we have obtained exclusively show the alleged site location and even the layout of the secret, previously unknown nuclear weapons facilities inside Iran. This, of course, raises fresh concerns about the regime's role in these ongoing nuclear talks with the Trump administration.
In order to prevent the mullahs from getting a nuclear weapon, this facility must be destroyed. Tonight, the way I see it, there are three options. One, Israel could use a tactical nuclear weapon to wipe out the site. They don't have bunker buster bombs. That would obviously be not only highly controversial, but come with massive risks to the region. It is not a good option. Option number two, Israel can send in a team of commandos on the ground, also very risky with a much lower chance of success. The third best option involves the United States of America, our military, which is equipped with these 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs capable of penetrating that mountain. Israel does not have this critical weapon in its arsenal, and they do not possess the large bombers that are capable of dropping an ordnance of that size. So now President Trump has a decision to make.
To the isolationist crowd, my question would be, what makes your position materially different than the beachside foreign policy of Joe Biden? Sticking your head in the sand is no different than sitting in the sandy beaches of Delaware and saying don't. When we just said don't, which is what Biden said, what it got us was two global wars, one in Israel, one in Ukraine, both of which are raging. It got us the fall of a country to the Taliban. These are the facts. The facts are this. Iran is in the weakest position they have ever been in, not because of the United States, because of what Israel has done. This is a narrow window I don't believe we will ever have again.
This is good versus evil. You're either a patriotic American who's going to get behind the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, or you're not.
I hope he does. I think it will secure his place in history as a peacemaker, because after the nuclear program is dismantled, and he has said for 10 years they may not have a nuke. He said it last night. He said it 10 years ago when he came down the escalator. He's been consistent. They may not have a nuke. After it's destroyed, he'll go into the history books as a great peacemaker.
So as you can see, we are living in George Orwell's 1984. They are literally telling us that war is peace. And Hugh Hewitt is not the first person to say this. You know, up is down, left is right. The truth doesn't matter anymore. They will say whatever to justify a war with Iran. That's what they want Trump to do. And they're successful at that. So if Trump can somehow twist himself into a pretzel thinking that he'll be able to bolster his anti-war bona fides, which he has none, to be clear, but if he thinks that he can be viewed as the pro-peace candidate in some twisted way by going to war with Iran, and he'll come out looking like a hero and be remembered all throughout history, you might just do it. Now, they're also, as you saw, squawking at the MAGA holdouts to fall in line. They're also concocting bogus evidence about secret nuclear facilities discovered in Iran, even though Trump's own national security director said just in March that they weren't trying to get a nuclear weapon, and that was an assessment that the international community had made. You also have dickheads like Sean Hannity who are presenting Trump with options as if he's some sort of a fucking brilliant military tactician and saying, oh, well, based on my expertise, you know, not going to war isn't an option. I mean, it's outrageous. This is how you get moments like this. If you were too young to know what happened in the lead up to the Iraq War, history is repeating. So here's your history lesson. So when you step back and you look at the bigger picture, you don't have to wait 2 weeks to get a sense as to what Trump is going to do. You've got the media loudly manufacturing consent. It's not just Fox News. Unfortunately, it's also CNN as well. MSNBC to a lesser extent, but they still platform voices who are very pro-war. CNN has done some good segments. But having said that, though, there's not enough pushback given the severity of the moment. But you've got media manufacturing consent for war. You've got the Republican Party on board. You have no opposition from the Democratic Party. No real anti-war movement in this country. And on top of that, you have new polling data showing that there's actually some support for war, especially among Republicans, which was showcased on CNN, which either wittingly or unwittingly will normalize it and create a bandwagon effect. And on top of that, you've got pressure from Netanyahu, who's already at war with Iran, and you have pressure from donors who they helped him get elected. And, we can't hear these conversations taking place, but I'm sure that the individuals like Miriam Adelson, who sent him $100 million, are making some phone calls that we're not going to be privy to. Like, when all this is considered, you can see that we're very clearly headed in one direction right now. It's war with Iran. Now, my hope is that things change between now and the end of this arbitrary 2-week time frame that Trump gave us. But as it stands right now, war with Iran looks all but certain. And I genuinely hope I'm wrong here. I hope to God I'm wrong here. But the way it looks right now, and having lived through the Iraq war days, I fear the worst.